Greetings, it's I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire. And put on your tour guide hats, I'm bringing out the baton. It's time for me to continue my tour of Shadowrun's Sixth World. Yes, we're continuing to dive into the 2080s Shadowrun, technically, with some bits of time jumping back into 2060s, and taking on a world tour of various continents, reviewing things about them, letting you know what to find on those continents, what countries are there, and a little bit about those countries. And today, we're heading down to South America. Yes, we're going to the Amazon. We'll go on a little tour down the river, Amazon River in Amazonia, go through the Andes, maybe visit some Chile and stuff, get some good cuisine, check out the, make some friendly talks with some of the natives, various things there, see some of the wildlife and para-wildlife that, of course, has popped in there with the Amazon becoming a massive magical jungle in and of itself at this point in time. Thank you. Thank you, magic coming back. Anyway, let's dive in, because that's the thing about South America, is there are two, basically... Thanks, motorcycles. The thing about South America, there are two main nations under control that control South America in a way. One, because it's expanded to it, and the other, because it really is taking over it. Amazonia and Aztlan. Aztlan. We talked about Aztlan when we talked about North America, because they're who took over the Mexico Central America area. Their influence and part of their territory spreads into South America. This is very similar when we talk about Turkey in both Europe and Asia, and a little bit of Russia in both Europe and Asia. This is another country that spread between both of them. We're not going to dive into Aztlan today. If you want to learn about it a little bit more, check out my North America episode. It was a previous one, I think the first one I did of this kind of series. Today, though, we are going to hit on Amazonia a little bit, but it's one that, out of all these South American nations, I can safely say is probably the one we're going to dive into the most. The rest of these nations, well, we know these nations exist. We know some basic stuff about a lot of them. But the problem is, there is no real good books. Now let me explain. In kind of going over and trying to figure out, because I'd like to suggest books that you can check out to find out information about a lot of places, I came up with a list of books that I can suggest. It's a pretty big book list. That's the problem. And no motorcycles until I started this entire thing, and then as soon as I started, motorcycles. Always that way. Anyway, it's a pretty big book list because none of them really cover things well. And I think that's the issue. None cover things well. Starting here, we have the Shadowrunner's Anarchist Streetpedia. It has some information about some of the countries in there, and certainly there are various places mentioned in South America, but it isn't a book for straight up South America. The Sixth World Almanac is a similar thing. It has the world map in the Sixth World Almanac. So that's a lot of information that we have for what nations there are, how many there are, and things like that. Especially a lot of these nations that aren't well defined come from the Sixth World Almanac. It's a fortunate book because it has a world map, and we can see what's in the world. This book here, which is very tiny, I'll try to put the bigger one over top of it here. This is the Shadows of Latin America book, which is an older book, and I don't know if I have a copy. And it covers some information, but it focuses things on two nations mainly. Remember, I talked about the two nations that are the main ones that are focused a lot of points in time. Aztlan and Amazonia. It's that thing that we have two nations, which are the primary nations, and they take up a lot of the politics. I'm going to try to see if I And I don't have a copy of this book, unfortunately. The Shadows of Latin America. That's something I can say. It's an unfortunate thing. I'll try to take a look at where it came from originally. Ghost Cartels. It's a campaign, but it gives us information on the nations in South America. Yeah. The Vice book. And yeah. And here is a map that includes most of the nations here. Actually, I think this map here, we'll start with this one. We'll kind of switch between flags and these. I've got two maps to check out. You can see where Aslan is here. French Guiana, Amazonia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Paraguay, Argentina, Chile. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Uruguay is technically on there. We'll talk about it. 9. There's 2 nations that we'll talk about a little. They are kind of separate there. And I've also got this map here, which was someone did on DeviantArt. Just want to show that one off. We'll use this one because it's a little bit more official for most of them, but we can use that one also. Alright, so, hey, here's Aslan's flag, because we did mention that they are a nation here. They've technically pushed themselves into South America. Again, I've talked about them before, and their rivalries and battles with Amazonia will be an important thing to talk about in the upcoming time here, so keep that in mind. I just wanted to show this off here, because again, it's a thing. Anyway, let's go to the flag of Amazonia. The Amazon River. Again, I'm using a lot of the Shadowrun Wikipedia because this is the best place for a lot of this information, especially in this one, because there's so much problems with the information being spread between so many books. And I think that it is an issue. So we will, like, if I can talk about the index of information for Amazonia that comes, it is 3rd edition corporate download. The Germany sourcebook mentions some things about them. Year of the Comet, State of the Art, 64 Cyber Pirates, Underworld sourcebook. And of course then a whole lot of other books that reference things in massive amounts. It's the problem with this. That there are so many things. I think there is a German, there's a German only in the Shadowrun. But let's talk a little bit about Amazonia right now. Its capital is Manus. It's got over 200 million people in it. There's no economic data. Its leader is Speaker Upala. It is an awakened nation. And it's one of the few... trucks going by. It is a day for loud noises, so I apologize. Hope my noise cancellation cuts a little bit of that. It probably doesn't. It's one of the few nations to have a dragon as head of the state. Upala is a feathered serpent. It's a great dragon and leads Amazonia. So that's a pretty big thing here. It's basically Northeast and South America. It's spread over Orinoco and Amazonian Basin, the Brazilian Plateau. It includes Venezuela. It borders French Guiana, Aslan, Peru, Bolivia, Paraguay, Argentina, and Uruguay. It's mostly the Amazon jungle, and the Brazilian Plateau. Through the past 30 years, the Amazon jungle has regrown a lot. The urban areas called the Metropole or Rio Paula unites areas of San Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. So Metropole is the biggest sprawl in the area. One of the few places that actually has inhabitants to talk about with that entire thing. Drink. While someone makes a lot of noise in the background. It is a day of a lot of people making a lot of noise. So, effectively, these city sprawls, the best way to describe them is that they are places where the non-awakened folks have been pushed out from the area. They're still part of Amazonia, it's just they've been pushed to the coastlines and places like this, Metropole. So, in 2034, an awakened force led by 3 great dragons captured the cities of Brasilia, and the Brazilian government was forced to surrender. In the aftermath of the Great Revolution, Hualpa declared the creation of Amazonia. In 2049, they annexed Venezuela and half of Colombia. The following year, Aslan sources seized a portion of Venezuela from Amazonia. Tensions have been between the two nations since then. In 2073, there was a war between Aztechnology, Aslan, and Amazonia over Bogota. Amazonia has this crusade that to preserve the rainforest, it's a living thing, not to be raped. That's their words for it. It's harsh language that oftentimes is used to describe what happens to native forests. It's well-intentioned, ideal, but many of the Amazonian soldiers are overzealous in their beliefs. So, Bogota is unwilling to let their homes return to the rainforests and face torture at the hands of the Amazonian fighters. The Amazonians will be zealous. They'll kind of rainforest first is the unfortunate way they do a lot of things. In 2074, the Amazonian War ended with a lot of bloodshed and devastation. Aslan gained Bogota and regained Cali. The border between Aslan and Amazonia was pushed 60 kilometers past the 2071 border into Amazonian territory with a 3K buffer zone between them. So, politics in Amazonia is dominated by the Feather Serpents, led by the great dragon Hualpa. Awakened sentient creatures and shamans play a great role there. If anybody's speaking for Amazonia, it's Hualpa. It's also rumored to be back in eco-cells in Sator Krupp in Africa and Europe. It has, of course, relations with Germany because it is run by another great dragon. And the map looks like a part of the Amazon rainforest. Amazonia has not signed the business recognition accords, and Aztechnology is banned from conducting business with the country. Which led to a closure of some factories who were led by a subsidiary of Aztechnology. It also doesn't recognize the corporate court's standings that for the meaning of corporate extraterritoriality, because it doesn't recognize the business recognition accords. It does have some relations to Novatech. So though it's sort of like it doesn't recognize a lot of the corporate country's standards and these very big accords that basically are the extraterritoriality of mega corporations, but some corporations make deals there. They have an Arglotech launch site. They were the host of the 2064 World Cups. And, of course, the underworld is the Ghost Cartels. We'll talk about the Ghost Cartels a little bit, too. But, yeah. So, Amazonia has been in this contention place with Aslan for a long time and has kept things against them a lot. But anyway, we'll probably revisit this a little bit, and I'll try to get some more information on all of it. We can talk about more about Metropole, a lot of the sprawls and stuff like that, and what's going on in the country. But just to know that this is like a area that is under the control of dragons, and they are the fighters of the forest, and their armies which they lead, which include meta-humanity, are incredibly zealous protectors of the forest, and therefore, like, it's sort of like talked about Bogota, that's damned if you do, damned if you don't a lot there. Unfortunately for them. But we can move on and talk about another nation that we do have a little bit more information on, of course, with Argentina. So, it's a corporate republic. Buenos Aires is the capital. It has about 20 million individuals that live there. The Argentine peso is the currency. It's backed by technology and is currently in battles with the ghost cartels. And just because we've mentioned them a couple of times, we should talk a little bit about them, about who the ghost cartels are, just as a little bit. They are the descendants of the cocaine and marijuana drug cartels of the Andean nations in South America, particularly those in Colombia. So it's this syndicates that have a history of over 100 years, were the international drug trade in the 1960s, and basically became their own major crime group. Yeah. So there was some legitimacy to a number of cartels within Mexico, because three major groups, Ortega, Yule Ramos, and Diego Ortiz, formed the Oro Corporation that became As Technology. These are the big drug cartels in Mexico. They legitimacy. And the remaining cartels went into the shadows. So basically, As Technology is formed from an essence of drug cartels. That's another thing about them. They went legit. So, these other ones are the ghost cartels, which remain kind of in the shadows. So when we talk about them, they are a major crime group set in those times. In the turn, the ghost cartels are providing anti-government rebels with money, training, and extra manpower. They also funnel to the rebel supplies and guns from Amazonia. So any kind of things coming in from Amazonia come from there too. It's a corporate controlled state. It's a puppet basically state. Mostly As Technology is really in charge of them, but other corporations have their hand in the nation. It has a rivalry with Amazonia because of this, and oftentimes makes claims in Antarctica because of this too. So you can see, if we go to this one here, that's Argentina, who's south of the Amazonia there. Is basically a puppet of governments. Novatech, Renraku are other big ones that are in the nation there. If the fall of the Arajo regime in 2068, then the Crash 2.0, Sater Crook is the major corporate player now in Argentina. Novatech, Renraku are the big ones, and other umber ones. So Sater Crook's kind of taken over. Its South American headquarters is in Buenos Aires, led by Antonio Ortega, a former Novatech executive. There's the mention of Novatech again. Media enterprises are big business in Argentina. So the Edipase Group, which is partnered with Verizon, AAG, a subsidiary of Ares Macro Technology, Canal Nova, subsidiary of Novatech, Sakura, subsidiary of Nishihima Media, and Televisia, subsidiary of As Technology, are all big media enterprises in Argentina. So Argentina has a big media presence. It is still one of the largest countries in the Sixth World, and when it comes to total square kilometers, it's got the Andes to the west, the east is the Atlantic, it has grasslands, deserts, forests, cold, harsh south. It's neighbored with Chile along its western border. It's also got Bolivia, Paraguay in its north, and Amazonia to the northeast. So that's just a little bit about Argentina, which is a corporate puppet. That's the best to say about it. And if you're looking for information to dive into it, the Vice book, Neo Arcanistrypedia, Runner Saving Corporate Download does hit a little bit about it. 6-1 Armorneck mostly for the world map and things like that. But there's also things like the Sprawl Survival Guide has a little bit of information on it. And of course, the Shadows of Latin America book, which oh. So the Shadows of Latin America is not an officially released book. Good to know. But the drafts for it are released on the internet, so it's not officially canon. So I will mention, if you do find a copy of the Shadows of Latin America, the book I showed, that was the proposed cover. It was a book that was being planned, and it was announced by Callus Games, but in 2010, but it never had an official printing. So again, most of the author's drafts are online, so if you want to use that as reference points, it was stuff that was going to be official Shadowrun material, but it never was. So, sorry, I had to look that up finally. So, a lot of stuff on things like Argentina and stuff, extra stuff comes from that book. So, we will talk about some stuff. There are a couple of nations that we know a little bit more from unofficial sources, aka Shadows of Latin America. We will mention stuff like that. Let's switch back from this flag here to, let's just go to this one here because it shows it very often. We can use the other one occasionally. Bolivia. It's a communist republic. Leader is Limburg Valkelzo. It's run by a neo-communist regime. It's allied with the Morales cartel, which is, I believe, one of the ghost cartels, one of the most stable of them. So that's also a note on ghost cartels. It brings a lot of revenue to the country, provides military with training, recruits, and weapons. It hates Amazonia, opposes the Japan Corps, and supports guerrillas and rebels that fight against either of them. Valkelzo came to power, leading a local Aymarian natives in a revolution. He changes the senior party leaders on a frequent basis. It's landlocked, mountainous to the west, grasslands and drylands in the east, surrounded by the Amazonia east and north, Peru to the west, Chile to the southwest, Argentina and Paraguay all around it. So it's kind of surrounded. Again, Ghost Cartels mentions a bunch of this. Vice, Loose Alliance, another book that you can look into that mentions some stuff if you're looking deeper into Bolivia. We'll kind of switch between the two of these here as we talk about nations that I don't have flags for. Let's talk about Chile. So, we don't know a lot about Chile. Most of it comes from, the Vice book. What we know about is a corrupt government, for the most part, turns a blind eye to the ghost cartels trafficking, as long as they bribe politicians and the police there. It's an Andean nation, runs along the Andes Mountains, facing the Pacific Ocean, has forests, islands, small sections of desert and icy terrain, borders Argentina, Peru, and Bolivia. Its corporate presence are Ranraku and Yametsu. And again, the Vice book is really where it talks about this. We don't know a lot about Chile, unfortunately. It's on that list of stuff we don't know. And the Bolivia stuff, again, is a little unofficial just because... We'll keep switching back and forth between two pictures so we'll talk about some of these nations. Ecuador. So, we know a little bit more about Ecuador. Again, it's from the Vice book. From one page in the Vice book, talks about a bunch of these nations. That's how much information is surprised about these. We know these nations are there. We have maps that provide information that show these nations are there. We don't know how this nation, Ecuador, has evolved over 80 years from the reference point. Because remember, around the 2000s is when our timelines split, because a lot of stuff happens. So looking about 20 years ago, Ecuador, and comparing it to how it evolved with us today into what it would evolve in this thing here, hard to say. So we know the government of Ecuador is backed by Aslan with a huge backing by S technology. The troops were even invited in Ecuador. The government has been cracking down the ghost cartels. Right now, Ecuador kidnappings and assassinations of politics are common. And that right now being, of course, when the Vice book came out, and the Vice being, just as a note, because we've mentioned it and I showed a picture, it is a 4th edition Shadowrun book, so that is more like the 2070s. It's got Aslan to the north, Peru to this east and south, Pacific Ocean to the west. It's a land of mountains and tropical forests, and canned orchard headquarters in Guayaquil, which is mentioned in the Ghost Cartel. I'd have to look up Guayaquil, which city it is, but it's mentioned there. Oh, and Proteus is constructing a space launch site on the coast. French Guiana, we can talk about. Let's again switch our one here, just as goes between these two pictures here. Also known as Guyana, the Guyana Francaise. It's located in the Caribbean coast of South America. It's an area known as the Guyana Highlands. It is withheld being annexed by Amazonia, perhaps because it's technically an overseas department, French Department of District, or maybe even Seder Crook's influence. It uses the euro, but the Nuyen is accepted. Has 2 major cities, Cyan and Coro. Most of its territory is under heavy tropical rainforests. Metahuman presence mainly on the coastline. Seder Crook purchased the Central Spatial Guineas and Coro. Proteus AG also runs a partially submerged Arco block with a launch facility in the city of Devil's Eye in Archipelago. Novakek is in the process of building an aerospace facility in Cayenne. There's substance farming, gold mining, lumber, whatever brings in revenue. It has few physical resources, forcing it to rely on its location to earn money. So, yes. France still conducts underground nuclear tests, mostly offshore from French Guiana, as a show of bravado against Amazonia and Seder Crook. So France still does stuff there, because it's technically part of France. Kind of. Yes. Directly connected with it. That's why it's called, we might have to talk about French Guiana again a little bit when we talk about France. Maybe. We'll see. Let's, of course, switch our nation's images here back to the other Amazonia here, because we can talk about Paraguay. Sandwiched all in the middle there. We've gone through a bunch of these nations. Very quickly, because again, it's the unfortunate thing about South America. We have a lot to talk about. So, a high percentage of its citizens are awakened, and the Awakened Church of Christ is the dominant religious sect in Paraguay. It has its capital in Asuncion, which is known for its state-of-the-art biotech corporations and labs, and a strong scientific community. It's backed by Amazonia and a number of ghost cartels based within, including 2 of the big 4 ghost cartels. They use Paraguay as a hub to run weapons, drugs, supplies from Amazonia to insurgents in Argentina. Ciudad del Este is the stronghold of the Cauchoeria cartel. I'm butchering these, sorry about that. And the Morales cartel influence everything from the shadows. It's landlocked. It's connected to the Atlantic Ocean by a river. Has flatlands and grasslands surrounded by Bolivia to northeast, Argentina to the south and west, Amazonia to the east and northeast. Vice and the New Arcanist Streetpedia are the 2 books that do a good job of talking about them. In Augmentation, the capital of Paraguay is described as a living city where the buildings, which are described as bionic towers, which biomaterials and living wood, collecting rainwater and sunlight as well as seed solutions and stuff like that. So there is a mention about it in the Augmentation book. Briefly. about the capital Paraguay. So there's another thing there. But yeah, I have 3 more nations, and we can go to one that we got a flag for. Peru! Hey, we have a flag for Peru. I like it when we have a flag. Capitalize, it's an anarchist, anarchist communism. Its capital is Lima. A centralized anarchist capitalism. Just to describe it there. Currency is the Nuyen. So, it's a cartel stronghold. It forces the government to balance the interest of Japanicorps and the ghost cartels. Many cartel leaders have a visible presence in Peru as prominent members of high society. Motorcycle Day. Politicians and judges. Once the Japanese military withdrew after Japan was devastated by earthquakes and violent eruptions in the year of the comet, the Shining Path established regional governing bodies throughout Peru. A loose national organization was formed per their idea of decentralized power. Though without a centralized organization, Shining Path is a little unstable, slow to react to ghost cartels' activities. The only remaining stronghold of the Japanese is the city of Lima. So Japan had kind of invaded, was kind of driven out by the year of the comet, and now there's still some Japanese influence, but also the ghost cartels, and this Shining Path government doesn't really rule very well. The Shining Path government is not competent, as I just said. It's poorly run. It runs the cities, and any real power within the cities is actually Yakuza. Peru is very wild and dangerous, has a lot of awakened jungles. The Luquitos, which have power due to the Nazca lines, the Incan resurgence in Machu Picchu. And our Halcom was discovered naturally in Peru after Halley's Comet. So, yeah. Had Japan presence pretty heavily until the eruptions in Japan. But Shiwase and Yamatsu have heavy corporate presence, and the Nazca lines are magical sites. The Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path's mostly guerrilla insurgency, is still active in the countryside. During their subsequent tragedies, they're involved with the drug trade when they were fighting against the Japanese. Peru used to be a center of Yakuza activity in South America because of the Japanicorps corporations. With the Imperial Marines withdrawing, Lima is really their own stronghold they have left. They smuggle weapons and other goods through Peru to Amazonia and the rest of South America. The ghost cartels have really gained true power in Peru nowadays. The 2 main ones, the Andes cartel and the Morales cartel, move their drugs through Peru. Other than drug trafficking, they also operate rural protection rackets on farmers. And farmhouses have roost to play. So, yeah. And again, with Japan leaving, the Shining Path, which was an insurgent group, has gained some control of some cities. So they're a thing that's there. We're here when we talk about Uruguay. MTC and Shiwase have equal influence over the government, keeping most other mega corporations out. MTC built its nation infrastructure, and Shiwase focused on renewable energy. It's an active rebellion, which is pointed towards Amazonia by the Cuatha cartel. So Uruguay is technically not its own nation, but it kind of is, as you can see down there by the lines. It's in rebellion. So it is an area that had been taken over by Amazonia. It's in rebellion. It's attempting to become its own nation again. Okay, let's talk about the last nation here, kind of, which you really, unfortunately, can't really see on any of these maps, I don't think very well. Oh, you can see it in the north there, Caracas. Yeah, Caracas. Oh boy. That little thing that's pointing out Caracas? Yeah, that's Venezuela. Amazonia annexed most of it, with an Aslan counter-effect taken to the west. A ceasefire treaty with Amazonia reduced Venezuela to a microstate around its capital, Caracas. So Venezuela really is just Caracas. It's mostly gone now. There are places that mention it: loose alliances, runners' havens, street magic. It talks about Caracas in general. Venezuela is basically gone, but you can see it on the map there, and it's pointed out. They call it Caracas because that's what it really is, but it is technically Venezuela. And you can see the metropole down there on the Amazonian map there too. On this one here, it shows the metropole down there for the big area where most of the population, a huge amount of population is. But that's South America. Well, a huge one. I've had much bigger sets of these things that I've talked about when I've mentioned a lot of these various nations. It's just an unfortunate thing that the entire area is pretty small in comparison. Not to say that there aren't a lot of nations down there. No, we talk about a lot of nations. It's just the fact that Amazonia takes over when we talk about those nations. Heavily. It just eats up the discussion on South America. And their rivalry with Aslanten just hits hard. That there's this kind of war between the two of them that just controls what is South America. And as you can see, there are other groups there. The Ghost Cartels, which oppose which oppose Aztlan very heavily. Aztlan influencing a number of governments there. So there's like a lot of the other governments within South America are either kind of general puppet states or influence. And the Ghost Cartels are their own thing, too. Yeah, they use Amazonia a lot, but really they also oppose Amazonia and really hate Aztlan. Because, again, Aztlan have that history with cartels. We'll talk about that more when we get into that entire thing in the future. But, yeah. It's an interesting nation, and there is a lot of stuff to visit, a lot of interesting places to go to. It's just the fact is, our information on it is very limited. And yeah, one of the things is there's a unofficial book, because it was never published properly. That's a source of information. That's a heavy source of information. If I want to know about South America, the Shadows of Latin America book, the drafts of it, and you can maybe find online. Best bet you got. And again, it's not going to have everything. And again, it's also stuff that's technically not canon. But I will tell you, it might be your best bet for information until Catalyst Games provides us with more information on South America. More than just what the Ghost Cartels book, and more than just all these various random sources which talk about these places, or brings out little bits of information on it. That's... As much as, like, I've complained about a lot of other nations, a lot of other places in the world, I feel like this is the one that has the least, in a way. At very least, you know, you had a source book for, like, Africa. You got more information on Africa, Asia, Europe. You have books that tell us more about some of those nations, and certain nations to a large degree. We don't get that here. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about it. These general information on these nations helps a lot, and at least we have some basic idea about them. There are places in the world, nations, that we have pretty much a name, and that's about it. At least there's a little bit of information on most of these places, even if it's just a couple of sentences here and there. It gives you an idea about something. So, I hope you enjoyed. We're going to still go more tour. There's more places to visit in Shadowrun. I hope you come join me next time when I talk about them. And all the motorcycles, which are driving by today. It's motorcycle day. It's sunny out, when it's been raining for the past couple of days. Everybody's got to drive on a motorcycle. Hey, maybe you'll get one in Shadowrun. I always got a motorcycle in Shadowrun. If you've ever gone to South America or dealt with things like the Shadow cartels and the campaign book in your Shadowrun games, let me know. Or Amazonia, Aslan, any of these nations done anything South America related? Let me know in the comments below on this when it goes up on YouTube. You could have let me know in comments on Twitch if you're joining me live. So yes, my tabletop stuff is streamed live on twitch.tv/Dracovin Empire. I go do this on Tuesdays, Thursdays, early afternoon, usually around 1 o'clock. Saturdays in the mornings, usually around 11. You'll be joining me live then. Give a follow on Twitch. Joining me on the YouTube side, hey, great, thanks. Hope you enjoyed watching this. Subscription on YouTube, leaving a like, leaving a comment, like I said, leaving a bell for notifications. Those all things are great to engage with this information. Keep help the algorithms and stuff like that. I do have social medias, a Discord and Twitter.com, a link where I talk about the schedule and general random thoughts that happen to me, brain farts and things like that. I think that's everything I normally need to shout out for these videos, for this stuff, for the streams/videos. That's speeding much faster than 25 miles per hour. That is the speed limit. What is it with people speeding and motorcycles today? It's just one of those days. Anyway, I was interrupted. I have thoughts. I was saying goodbye. I think I said everything I need to say. Look, I love Shadowrun. I love the Sixth World. I hope you learned about it. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll do more in the future. We'll do more tabletop stuff in the future. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to say to all of you out there, on the YouTube side at very least, farewell, goodbye, see you later. Join me on Twitch. But anyway, until the next time we chat and we learn about Shadowrun or any other tabletop, I bid you all a farewell.